What if the fate of an entire nation rested on a single tomato harvest?
This season, however, something extraordinary stirs. President Ibrahim Traoré has unveiled a new plan, an $8,100,000 tomato processing plant. Not a flashy dam, not another foreign-financed railway, but a homegrown factory, daring and unassuming. It is small enough to seem insignificant to outsiders, yet bold enough to threaten the status quo that has kept Burkina Faso dependent and impoverished for generations.
To grasp the significance, consider how the world's greatest transformations have often begun with modest steps. In the 1950s, South Korea's decision to invest in local textile processing planted seeds for its later industrial boom. In Brazil, local coffee cooperatives changed the fate of entire regions by keeping more value at home. Now, Burkina Faso stands at a similar crossroads, where a single tomato factory carries the dreams of millions. Picture endless fields in Burkina Faso, blazing red with ripe tomatoes beneath a relentless sun. The air is thick with the scent of earth and fruit, a testament to months of hope and hard labor. Yet every year, tons upon tons of these tomatoes, fruits of tireless dedication, are abandoned, left to rot in the dust. For the farmers, it means months of sweat and hope are lost, traded for the silence of empty plates at home. With each spoiled crop, another dream dies quietly, unnoticed by the world beyond these fields. This isn't just a story of agriculture. It is a story of resilience, disappointment, and the ever-present search for dignity. Imagine a young farmer, Miriam, waking before dawn, tending rows of tomato plants with her children by her side. She dreams of sending her eldest to school, of buying a sturdy roof for their home. But as the tomatoes ripen all at once, the market becomes flooded, prices crash, and the excess fruit is left to perish. Miriam returns home, her hands stained red, her heart heavy with loss. This scene repeats across villages, season after season, as thousands of families face the same heartbreak.
To understand the stakes, we must step into the lives of the farmers and families whose fortunes hinge on each harvest. Their story reveals why this gamble is both necessary and deeply perilous.
Why has a tomato factory become the battleground for hope and fear, not just for Burkina Faso, but for a continent hungry for change? The answer lies in the struggle over who gets to own the fruits of Africa's labor and who decides its destiny. For decades, African nations have watched their wealth drain away as raw goods are exported, only to be bought back later as expensive finished products. This plant represents more than concrete and steel. It poses a challenge. Could a single facility shift the balance, turning waste into wealth and dependency into dignity? If it works, Burkina Faso could finally hold on to the riches that have always slipped away. But if it fails, the window for change may close, condemning more families to hunger, more futures to be forgotten. The stakes are not just about tomatoes, but about rewriting the nation's destiny. What chains a land of abundance to a future of scarcity? In Burkina Faso, over half the population works the soil, yet most farmers' hands return empty after each harvest. The earth gives bounty, mounds of tomatoes, but without machines or cold storage, these riches wither in the heat, wasted before they ever reach a plate. Each year, many thousands of tons of tomatoes are picked, only to spoil for lack of processing or transport. This is not just lost food, it is squandered profit, dashed labor, and vanished hope for communities already on the brink. The pain is sharp. Hard work and fertile fields, yet the wealth slips away, season after season. The stakes are immense. If nothing changes, Burkina Faso will stay trapped, unable to feed itself or invest in its own future. Poverty will pass from parent to child as if it were their inheritance. Yet even in hardship, a flicker of possibility remains, a chance to claim the value of their own land and sweat. Now, a bold decision offers a new path. Burkina Faso is preparing to build its own tomato processing plant, a move that could rewrite this story. For these farmers, every harvest is a test of faith. They picture better days for their children, but as their crops rot, those dreams dissolve too. This is not merely a farming challenge. It is a snare that keeps families and entire villages poor year after year. Picture Fatoumata, a grandmother who has tilled the same soil for 5 decades, recalling seasons where her family had to barter with neighbors just to afford medicine. The heartbreak is not just personal, it is generational. Burkina Faso's story echoes across Africa. Many nations export raw crops and import costly finished goods, a pattern that drains local wealth and deepens dependency. The humble tomato stands as a symbol. What African hands grow, others profit from. Take Ghana's cocoa, exported to Europe only to return as expensive chocolate, or Nigeria's oil, shipped crude and bought back as petrol. This cycle traps entire nations, making it nearly impossible to break free from poverty's grip. In Burkina Faso, one modest tomato processing plant is daring to try. Every season, thousands of plump, sun-warmed tomatoes are abandoned to rot in the fields. Now, this unassuming factory aims to change that fate, transforming fragile fruit into tomato paste, rich sauces, and dried goods that can endure for months instead of mere days. Imagine Awa, a young woman from Bobo Dioulasso, who once thought her only future was in subsistence farming. With the factory, she trains as a machine operator, earning a steady wage. She helps her family, saves for her own business, and dreams of sending her siblings to school. Her story is echoed by hundreds, each finding new opportunities where once there were none. Can a single factory challenge decades of dependency and resignation? History offers examples of how one determined effort can become a catalyst for wide-reaching change. In India, the Green Revolution began with a handful of local factories producing fertilizer and improved seeds, eventually transforming food security nationwide. In Rwanda, a single coffee washing station set off a chain reaction that doubled farmer incomes in a decade. These stories remind us that even the smallest spark can ignite a much larger fire. Each can and every jar is more than a product. It is a statement. What once disappeared as waste now remains as wealth, circulating within Burkina Faso rather than bleeding out across its borders. Jobs spring up for farmers, packers, drivers, and technicians. For the first time, many young people, especially women, find steady work beyond the fields. This is about income, yes, but it is also about dignity, hope, and the possibility of a future controlled by local hands. For instance, the factory's solar panels cut electricity costs and decrease reliance on fossil fuels. Water used in washing tomatoes is filtered and reused for irrigation. These innovations, though modest, set a precedent for sustainable industry across the region. The ripple effects reach further. With a dependable buyer for their crops, farmers plan ahead, invest in better seeds, and send their children to school with new confidence. Fewer tomatoes spoil, reducing methane emissions in the air, a small but real environmental gain. The factory relies on renewable energy and recycling, showing that even in the Sahel, modern solutions are possible. To address these challenges, the government has set up training centers in cooperation with local universities. They invite engineers from neighboring countries who have overseen similar projects in Senegal and Morocco, sharing best practices. Community leaders are involved in oversight committees, ensuring that local voices guide the factory's future. Yet every advance comes with a hurdle. Rough, unreliable roads threaten to spoil tomatoes before they reach the plant. Most workers have never handled machinery, so urgent training is needed. The government must act transparently, so profits stay where they belong. And, with much of the investment arriving from abroad, there is a risk. Will this plant remain in Burkinabe hands, or become just another foreign outpost? But even the boldest plan is never just about machines or money. The fate of the factory will rest on the choices and courage of those who work within its walls. Can a single tomato plant in Burkina Faso truly upend the old rules of global trade? For many, this is not just a hopeful idea, but a real and growing possibility, one with consequences rippling far beyond a lone field or factory. The world is watching. Can this nation run the factory efficiently, fairly, and independently? If it fails, the losses are brutal: renewed despair, political unrest, and the painful lesson that local control remains out of reach. But if it works, the rewards could echo across the continent, offering proof that Africans can build, manage, and own their own industries. Consider Ethiopia's experiment with local leather processing. Once reliant on exporting raw hides, the country invested in tanneries and shoe factories. Over 20 years, this led to thousands of new jobs and a thriving domestic brand, proof that value addition works. If the experiment succeeds, it could become a beacon for neighbors like Mali, Niger, and Ghana. They might break free from simply exporting raw crops, instead turning harvests into finished products and profits that stay close to home. What starts as a modest facility could evolve into a template, inspiring whole regions to reshape their economic destinies. Imagine a jar of Burkina tomato paste on a dinner table in Lagos, Accra, or even Johannesburg, its journey made possible by regional trade. Each sale strengthens local economies, supports families, and chips away at a system that has long kept Africa on the margins of global commerce. The African Continental Free Trade Area stands ready to magnify these gains. With borders easing for goods crafted within Africa, a tomato processed in Burkina Faso could reach new markets, fetch higher prices, and keep wealth circulating inside the continent. This is not a loud upheaval, but a quiet revolution, driven by homegrown value, not foreign aid. Yet, this shift does not come without friction. Western and Asian exporters, long the gatekeepers of Africa's processed food supply, are watching with alarm. Should more African nations follow in Burkina Faso's footsteps, these exporters stand to lose enormous and lucrative markets. Trade flows that have endured for generations could fracture, forcing a global reckoning. The history of trade wars is filled with such moments. In the 1930s, the United States imposed tariffs to protect its own textile industry, prompting retaliation and a reshuffling of global supply chains. More recently, China's rise as a manufacturer upended the status quo for Western producers. Burkina Faso's tomato plant may seem small, but in the context of Africa's future, it could be the first domino in a much larger shift. But with new power come new dangers. A stumble could leave the country exposed, reliant on foreign investors, imported machinery, or the shifting winds of politics. Old suppliers might retaliate, or African neighbors might clash as competition heats up for the same markets. Within Burkina Faso, the tomato plant has become more than a factory. It is a rallying point, fueling national pride and sparking new ambitions among farmers, city youth, and leaders alike. The question grows louder. If we can master tomatoes, why not cotton, mangoes, even electronics? The plant becomes a symbol, a flag waving for sovereignty, dignity, and self-determination. To prevent this, the government is exploring partnerships with local entrepreneurs and cooperatives, offering them shares in the factory and a seat at the decision-making table. By distributing ownership, they aim to anchor the plant's future in the hands of Burkina-based citizens, not distant investors. But what is it like on the ground as this quiet revolution takes root? To understand, we must step inside the factory itself. What can a humble tomato plant reveal about dignity and the power to claim value for ourselves? Burkina Faso stands at a crossroads between hope and uncertainty, ambition and risk. What is at stake is much more than money. It is the power to decide what Africa's future will look like. The impact echoes not just through balance sheets, but through identity and history. Most profound is the challenge to the world's old economic order. For decades, Africa's place was set. Send out raw goods, buy back finished ones. Now, with Burkina Faso's bold move, that script is being rewritten. The continent is stepping up, not just as a supplier, but as a creator of value. This could kindle new unity, or ignite debates over who leads and who follows. There is a deeper lesson here. Change does not always arrive with grand speeches or vast fortunes. Sometimes, one bold step, a single processing plant, can ignite transformation. When local leaders dare to invest in their own people and build on the resources they already possess, they plant seeds for something much larger. Real sovereignty comes not from outside promises, but from practice. For too long, offers of aid have brought hope, but not lasting change. It is only when communities truly build, run, and control their own solutions that the old cycle of dependence can finally be broken. It begins with a basic truth. Value lies not just in the things we grow, but in how we shape and own them. In Burkina Faso, for decades, raw tomatoes left in crates meant opportunity and wealth slipping away, leaving little behind except waste and regret. But by turning those tomatoes into paste, sauces, and dried goods at home, every fruit now holds the promise of local jobs, pride, and income that stays in the community. A small project, done right, can become a beacon. If this tomato plant thrives, it will do more than process vegetables. It will send a message across Burkina Faso and beyond. Local solutions are possible, and local confidence can grow into lasting change. Success, once seen, has the power to multiply. The story of the Grameen Bank in Bangladesh illustrates this. What began as a single lending program for rural women expanded into a global movement, empowering millions. Similarly, a single tomato plant, run with integrity and vision, could inspire local factories for rice, shea butter, or even solar panels. The ripple effect is real. Above all, the voices of those at the heart of the industry, farmers, women, and youth, must not be sidelined. They are not just recipients of change. They must be architects of their own future. Only with their leadership can new industries meet real needs and unlock prosperity that endures. Yet, the risks are real. Without transparency, strong oversight, and local control, old patterns threaten to return. Foreign investors, shifting markets, and distant politics can all siphon value away from the people who worked hardest to create it. The lesson is unmistakable. Real progress demands that control and benefit remain close to the community, guided by honesty and openness. To guard against corruption and outside capture, the factory posts its accounts publicly. Workers elect representatives to a council that oversees wages and workplace conditions. International NGOs are invited to audit the plant, providing reports accessible to all. These practical steps ensure that trust and accountability are woven into the very fabric of the new industry. As the world watches, the question extends beyond Burkina Faso. What choice will you make about ownership, dignity, and value in your own life and community? If Burkina Faso ignores these lessons, it risks falling back into old cycles of waste and dependence. But if it learns and acts, a future of locally controlled wealth is within reach, not just for tomatoes, but for every resource the nation holds. The stakes are not only national, but personal. What happens in Burkina Faso echoes everywhere people strive to reclaim agency over their own resources. The next chapter explores how this local experiment could inspire wider change. Will tomorrow's children savor the harvests of their homeland, or only inherit tales of what might have been? Imagine community leaders in rural India, Latin America, or Southeast Asia watching Burkina Faso's progress. They see that transformation is possible without waiting for the perfect moment or the perfect partner. Instead, they learn that the courage to act, the discipline to manage, and the resolve to include everyone can break the chains of dependency anywhere. In Burkina Faso's sun-soaked fields, a single tomato factory now rises. For generations, abundance and waste have walked hand in hand. Crops picked with hope have rotted in the heat, while families counted the cost in lost earnings and fading dreams. The risks are as real as the promise. On one side, lives transformed, food safeguarded, and dignity reclaimed. On the other, the danger that fragile roads, scarce capital, or outside interference could unravel these hopes once more.
This new factory is more than machinery and mortar. It stands as a bold refusal, a break from the old story where raw fruit left the country and poverty stayed behind. By turning tomatoes into opportunity at home, Burkina Faso claims the right to shape its own path.
What happens now will write the next chapter. Will neighbors and future leaders see a beacon for change? Or will this factory become just another line in the ledger of missed chances? Ultimately, the outcome rests not only with officials or investors. It belongs to every grower, worker, and young dreamer who decides to believe in the worth of their own hands. So we ask again, will this generation and the next taste the sweet reward of their labor, or inherit only the hush of fields left silent by waste? This is more than a question for Burkina Faso. It is a question for every community, every nation, and every individual seeking to reclaim dignity and value from the work of their own hands. The world watches, waits, and wonders. Will you dare to believe in the power of one small step to change everything?